This video, like many of the ones we do, was actually inspired by an interesting request that came in from a potential user. So we got an email over Christmas, and what they wanted to know was whether it was possible in AdapTable to create a dynamic column that would show some array data, but to render that array not as the raw values, but as an AG Grid Sparkline column. And the answer is you can do that in AdapTable. And it's actually quite an interesting use case, hence we thought we would show this video. So this is our demo site, this is our homepage, and let's go to this first demo. Let's make it full screen. In fact, tell you what we'll do. Let's go into format column and let's just suspend that so that it's a bit easier to see. So the way to do this in AdapTable is actually a two-stage process. First, you need to create this new column, and then once you've done that, you can then render it as a sparkline. There's a couple of different ways to create dynamic columns in AdapTable, but the most common is through what we call a calculated column. As the name implies, a calculated column shows a value which is calculated based on an expression that it's given. Typically, that will be other columns in the same row, but in fact it can be a lot more complicated. You can have aggregations based on a whole number of different rows which is grouped, or in fact you can have cumulative calculations or quantile calculations, and it can get very complicated if need be. But this is a very basic calculated column where we're just going to show an array which we will then later render. So let's first create the calculated column. So let's do new calculated column. Let's call this demo array. Oops, give it a better spelling. And let's give it a nice friendly name. And then we now need to create the expression that we're going to show. And as we said, we're just going to produce a basic array. So we can use this to array expression function. As you can see, there's hundreds of functions available to do all sorts of very complicated stuff. But the toArray function, as the documentation says, it creates an array, giving the parameters, and then it returns that as an array. So let's do that now. Let's go into toArray. And now let's add these four number columns here. So we can add open issue count, closed issue count, open PRs, and then lastly, close PRs. So there's our very basic array. And now we can add more settings. AdapTable knows that it's a number array, so we don't need to change that. Let's make the column resizable if we need to, and then we can also make it filterable. So there we are. There's our calculated column, which uses the toArray function, takes these four columns, and will output an array. In order to see it, let's go into our layout. Let's edit the layout. Let's go into columns. There's our demo array. Let's first make it visible, and then let's just push it so it's next to the four columns, which is part of it. So there we are. And now we can see there's demo array, and it's showing obviously these four here. And obviously it updates in real time. So if I change that 207 to be 800, then you can see the array's changed. So that's the first part. We've now created our calculated column, which is a live calculated column showing the values of these four columns. And then to show that as a sparkline is very straightforward, because in fact AdapTable now knows that is a number array, so it automatically adds this create sparkline column menu item. So when we click that, it knows it's a sparkline. It in fact knows what the column is, and now we can select the type. So we can do a line, an area, a column, or a bar. Let's do an area, and then there's all sorts of things we can change: the axis, the highlight style. So let's, for instance, change the color. Let's make it brown. And there we are. Very simple. We've created a sparkline column of the demo array. And then when we finish, there's our sparkline. It's using the array type. And again, obviously it's live. So if I change this number from 546, which is, actually let's change this big number here, we'll still probably see it better. It's currently 9318, so if we just change that to 78, you can see the sparkline changes. So there we are. We've created a calculated column that looks at these four columns here. and then we've rendered it as an AG Grid Sparkline. So I hope that's interesting. It certainly answers a question which our potential user asked us. If you've got any questions or there's anything you would like to see in AdapTable, please do get in touch, and we look forward to helping you as well.